Well. Clemson Tiger fans, college football fans, welcome back to another episode of the All In Show here on the Voice of College Football Clemson channel. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm, as always, your host, Tiger Paul Craven. I got my buddy Jordan Bowman in the back waiting to join us. I cannot believe, guys, that we are halfway through the college football season. It seems like yesterday that the college football season was kicking off and fall camp was ending. But we are already halfway through this version of the 2023 Clemson Tigers. And it's not like we thought. We got a ton to talk about tonight. And we are going to do it off-season style tonight. We got so much to talk about in tonight's show. We will talk about the grades for each position. We will talk about, we'll kind of put a bow on our thoughts for the Wake Forest game, and we will get into all of that. Before we get into the show tonight, though, if you are not subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Come hang out with us permanently, guys. We are here every Thursday at 7 p.m. doing this all-in show for you guys. And then we are live after every single Clemson game to give you our live thoughts, our live reaction, our unfiltered reaction. So please go ahead and do that for us. Hit that like button. I see there's 12 people in the chat right now. Please go ahead and hit that like button for us. We really do appreciate it, both me and Jordan Bowman. And then also, if you guys would want to support the channel monetarily in any way, the super chat feature is available, so feel free to utilize that throughout the show tonight. We will highlight your comment. We will respond to your comment and all of that good stuff. But without further ado, let me get my buddy Jordan Bowman in here tonight. We got a ton to get into, so let's go ahead and kick this show off. Jordan Bowman, how you doing tonight, man?
Living the dream, man. Living the dream. It's been a pretty interesting week within the Clemson fandom, whether it be, in real life on social media. This week has been pretty interesting because it was kind of another shock to the system. We had talked about, these past couple of weeks about how the offense seemed to be, finding its footing and improving. And then you get an opportunity at home against a Wake team that is, struggling and, trying to find itself offensively. And you just kind of laid an egg. It was kind of a stinker.
Yeah.
And you thought there was going to be that continued progression. Even if you had expected a step back, I don't think people expected that kind of step back, 17 points at home type of step back. And so I think that there's,
on homecoming, nonetheless.
Homecoming as well. Yeah, I think a lot of people, are reacting to that result. And I think that's just it's caused a little bit more, stir and unrest among the fan base because that was not a comfortable game to sit through. You never really felt like Clemson was in danger of losing it, but it was such an ugly, just rock fight that you were like, this is not what Clemson teams of old would do, especially against Wake Forest, a team that Clemson historically has, even prior to Dabo, handled pretty easily. I know that Wake is a well-coached team, and Dave Clawson has got that program in a better spot than they've been. But still, You're at home, and you're coming off of a really confidence-boosting win over Syracuse on the road. And you just you come back home and think you're going to have a really nice environment. It's 3:30 kickoff, and the game felt dead. It was like the team felt like they were just kind of going through the motions, and even the fans seemed to reflect that. And it just was an ugly slugfest for 4 quarters that you just kind of were waiting for to be over. You're like, let's just get out of here with a win. So it does lead to some questions about Clemson heading into the bye week, about, how this team, fixes its issues. And it's going to be interesting. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a ton to talk about tonight, guys. We are going to do kind of the Wake wrap up here and give our final thoughts on the Wake game and all that stuff. But before we get into that, Jordan, man, like, can you believe, as I mentioned earlier, can you believe it's the season's half over at this point? I mean, we're through 6 games of the season right now. It seems almost like yesterday that the college football season started and it's already half over. And I know there's so much build up to college football and, with recruiting and fall camp and all that stuff. And then, you blink an eye and then suddenly, holy crap, we're in week 6, heading into our bye week. It's kind of crazy to me to think about how time has flown through this season. It feels shorter to me than other seasons, but that's probably just because this is the current season I'm watching.
Yeah, it's hard to believe, and it's just another reminder that this season is so short. It's so sweet, but it is so short. And when you get caught up in the weeds, it's over before you know it.
Yeah.
While we have a lot to gripe about as far as Clemson is concerned, it's I would rather be doing this than sitting and waiting for the season to start in the off season. So I always got to keep that in perspective when talking about college football and this team in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick before we get into our Wake final thoughts, let's go ahead and give a shout out to the comments section. We got Droid in here, Cade Klubnik enthusiast, John Sarian getting in here, one of our regulars. Thanks so much for getting in here. Byron Davis gets in here. Not me gets in here as well. Thank you guys so much for joining the show. John Smith, SC Country. Thank you guys all for getting in so far, already commenting in the comment section. We really do appreciate it. As you guys know, we will turn the show over to you guys a little bit later and let you guys kind of drive our conversation. But before we do that, let's go ahead and get into this Wake wrap up, if you will. Okay. Look, this Wake game heading into the bye week, as you previously stated, Jordan, was not what we thought. We thought this offense was building into something. You can point to the Florida State game, although it be a loss, we thought that we had something going on the offensive side of the ball. Even though we lost the game, it felt good looking at this offense perform in the way that they did. And then they head into Syracuse. They had a little bit of issues, but the downfield passing game was really highlighted in the Syracuse game. So you thought that you were starting to build with this offense. You thought you were starting to see Cade, be a little more comfortable in the pocket, kind of stick in there a little bit more, look downfield. Our downfield passing game looked to be rounding into shape. And then you come into this Wake Forest game, heading into a bye week. And we kind of talked about it offline before we came onto the show. Jason Priester of Clemson Sports Media kind of made an interesting stat that I had not heard previously to this week, but I want to highlight it because I think it's important. Since Dabo Swinney took over for the Clemson Tigers, and it may have been previous to Dabo Swinney, but Dabo Swinney era is kind of all we care about at this point because it's been so long. Clemson does not do well going into the bye week. If you look, they've had probably 2 games in the last, 10 to 15 years where they have played well going into the bye week. So this seems to be somewhat of a trend for the Clemson Tigers. What are your thoughts on why Clemson struggles so much heading into the bye week? Do you think it's the timing of it? Do you think they're just looking forward to that break and kind of maybe mentally taking their foot off the gas? What do you think it is? And why has this Clemson team traditionally struggled so much heading into the bye weeks?
It's really hard to it's kind of hard to pinpoint because on one hand, when these schedules are being made, the quality of teams you're playing are, kept in mind when deciding where they want their bye week and all of that.
Right.
And so some teams like to place their bye week after a difficult stretch or right before a difficult stretch. And yeah, I don't know. It just seems like there's it's hard to really put my finger on why. It just seems to be a trend, and even going back to the better years in Clemson history, like I mean 2018. Well, not 2018. I think the bye week that week was Wake Forest, but like 2019,
Yep.
that the North Carolina game where you survive on the road against Sam Howell, they stopped that 2-point conversion to win the game. 2017, you lost to Syracuse that year.
Yep.
More recently, 2021, I believe, was Boston College. That was a 1913 rock fight that where you had to recover a fumble at the end with BC driving into Clemson territory to win the game. So it just seems to be a crazy thing. 2020, even just last year was the Syracuse game, right? Where Cade Klubnik gets put in and Will Shipley kind of has a big game running the ground in the second half to come back and win that one. So it just seems to be a trend with this team as far as struggling into the bye week. But I don't know if that's to be. I don't know if that's the root cause of why Clemson struggled against Wake on Saturday, because it's hard not to look at that and see some of the issues that you've seen from this team previously. So I don't know, but it's a really interesting trend.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely an interesting trend. And you think back to that Syracuse game last year. That was a 27-17 finish in Death Valley. I was at that game, and in the first half, we looked just absolutely terrible. We looked inept, and then in the second half, kind of the running game took over. Cade kind of won that game with his legs, as did the running backs running and just taking off in the second half. Without that, I don't think we win that game. But it's definitely become a trend for the Tigers. I don't really know why, but it's just an interesting stat that was brought up this week that I didn't previously realize before kind of this week. But let's kind of talk about the Wake Forest game as a whole, and I kind of want to start it off. And I looked up every drive of the Clemson Wake Forest game before we came on tonight, specifically to outline how poorly the offense executed in this game. Okay. And I'm going to list off every first half drive and then every second half drive. And it's going to kind of, I think, put in perspective for a lot of people how poor this offense really did play in both halves of the game. You could say they played worse in the first half than they did the second half, and that may be true. But I'm telling you, they didn't play very much better in the second half than they did the first half. If you were watching the game at all, it was kind of an abysmal performance. It was a performance where the offense really couldn't get out of its way. They couldn't really get any momentum going. The downfield passing game was literally non-existent. I don't remember Clemson taking a single shot downfield in the game.
It's because we
Uh,
didn't. We
the,
didn't. We didn't. There wasn't a single. Clemson didn't throw a single pass beyond, I believe, 13 yards in the air.
which is crazy coming off the 2 weeks previous.
Yeah.
Of Florida State and Syracuse, right? Where our downfield passing game started to look like, as I previously stated, like it was rounding into form. And then all of a sudden we come into a Wake Forest game where, we took no shots at all. And I realized they were dropping people into coverage, but then why couldn't we run the ball more effectively, specifically on short yardage situations? But we'll get further into that. Let me list off the drives for Clemson, right? We had 7 drives in the first half, and they go as follows: 3 and out to start the game, fumble on the very next drive, a mesh point between Cade Klubnik and the running back. All too often it's happened this season. It's starting to become not sort of an issue, definitely an issue for this offense, right? Then they go 3-and-out again. Then they have a very long, very successful touchdown drive. Then they go 3-and-out, punt, and then to end the first half, they have the muffed punt by Tyler Brown that gave Wake an extra possession in the first half. Although Wake went on to miss that field goal and our defense held strong, what I will give credit for in the first half is our defense allowed 0 points on those 2 turnovers. Both turnovers came in the first half for Clemson during the Wake game, and the defense held strong, and they did not allow any points off of those turnovers. And I really do think that was the difference in the game. It really was the defense. And then you come into the second half. Clemson comes out, they drive the ball, they get a field goal. Then they drive the ball again, they miss a field goal. Then they go 3-and-out, then they get a touchdown, and then they take a knee to end the game. So you could say that the second half was much better from a production standpoint as far as drives. They only got 5 drives in the second half, and 3 of them should have ended in points. And then the fourth one was taking a knee to end the game. There was really only 3-and-out, 3-and-out in the second half. So they definitely executed a little bit better in the second half. But, I mean, you think about that first half. What do you think about that? 3-and-out, fumble, 3-and-out, touchdown, 3-and-out, punt, muff punt. That was the first half for the Clemson offense. And that's just – I mean, it's inexplicable, man. That's not how you win games. They won the game because they're that much better than Wake Forest. But against a better team, you are definitely going in the half, probably down a couple scores, if not more, playing like that.
Absolutely. And to really, just dive into it, the offense, I'm going to say the offensive struggles. I think there's a lot been made in the Clemson fan base, and rightfully so, in previous years about the wide receivers aren't playing well, and it's kind of hard. It's making it harder on the quarterbacks and all that. I'm going to say that I think the offensive struggles start first and foremost with the offensive line, and then probably next I would say is Cade. I actually don't think the wide receivers are as big of an issue as people seem to think with why our downfield passing game is so inconsistent. But I think the offensive line and run blocking has been pretty abysmal for a few weeks now. And this was no different. And I think teams are starting to figure out the blueprint. It just seems like they're just simple stuff, like simple movement, forcing the like stunts, just getting the offensive line to have to pass off assignments. They seem to struggle. They don't really handle it well. And they're not consistently getting a push up front, even when they have light boxes, even when they have numbers advantages. And because of that, that makes everything else harder. If you can't, so Wake played a lot of quarters, cover 4, cover 2, a lot of too high stuff. And because of that, typically conventional wisdom is like, well, okay, well that means they're devoting more guys that they're playing back, playing off, and there's less guys in the box. You should be able to run. You're getting 5-6 man boxes a lot of the time. So you have a numbers advantage, especially if you have an inline tight end blocking as well. And this offensive line consistently struggled to get a push on light boxes. And because of that, it makes everything more difficult because Wake knew that Clemson wasn't good enough on a down-to-down basis to execute consistently when it came to running the ball. And because this offense needs to be able to run the ball to be able to build it off and do other things, it made it that much easier for Wake as a defense. Because if you can stop the run with 4 or 5 guys, I mean, that's a defensive coordinator's dream. And I think the success that Clemson had against Syracuse and Florida State was because those teams thought that they could man up Clemson's wide receivers. They were sending more pressure. They were, they were playing tighter to the line of scrimmage, and because of that, the receivers were getting open, and Cade was hitting them, and they were getting more explosive plays. But when you have a team that's just playing back, kind of like how Duke did in Week 1,
yep.
It makes you have to be able to run the ball. You have the numbers advantage. I know people hate hearing, take what the defense gives you and all that, but sometimes taking what the defense gives you is the right thing to do. But if you're not executing well enough that you can't even take what the defense is trying to give you, then everything else is going to struggle. And that's exactly what you saw on Saturday. Wake said, we don't think you can run the ball on us. So we're just gonna sit back. We're gonna give you light boxes, and you're not gonna be able to hit much downfield.
Absolutely. And frankly, they took some cues from Syracuse. If you go back to the Syracuse game, although our downfield passing game looked really good.
Well, that's the thing. Syracuse didn't play back very much. That's what I was saying was Florida State and Syracuse, they played a lot of man.
Yeah.
Wake was playing a lot of zone, a lot of quarters, because they were like, well, we don't think you can run on us, and we don't think Cade is good enough to make those reads in the short and intermediate game to consistently move you guys down the field. And they were right for a lot of the day. So that's right. That's what I think Wake took more from Duke, because that's exactly how Duke played Clemson.
Yeah,
I think they took more from Duke than Syracuse. And
I just mean the Syracuse reference that I was trying to allude to was more so kind of the twist up front, the movement up front, trying to confuse this offensive line, because let's face it, and we'll get into it later in the show when we start giving our grades on the offensive line and all that kind of stuff. But this offensive line has struggled, with pickups. They have struggled with twist and ability to pick up run blocks. They've struggled with the ability to reset the line of scrimmage. And I thought that Wake kind of combined what Duke did to us as a defense and what Syracuse did us, because they did a lot of those twists up front. So there may be somewhat of a blueprint out there to kind of disrupt this Clemson offense, and that's not a good thing. And this offensive line, we'll get into it later, they have to get better. It just hasn't been enough this season. And this is a team last year that probably had a worse offense, but a more reliable running game last year than we do this season, which is surprising to me, because we have all of the same guys minus one. And we seem to have somewhat regressed when it comes to definitely short yardage situations and just the ability to get yards when we need it. There's no reason that you shouldn't be able to run all over Syracuse. There was no reason that we shouldn't have been able to run all over Wake. They were dropping people into coverage. They were daring Clemson to run the football, and we couldn't run the football quite successfully enough. Yeah, if you look at the numbers, they weren't terrible on the ground. But when you watch the actual game and you get to the nuances of the game, when it came to short yardage situations, Clemson is terrible at short yardage situations when running the ball. And it makes no sense. It seems like every time, and you tell me if I'm wrong, Jordan, it seems like every time Clemson runs the ball on 3rd and 2 or 4th and 1, we get stuffed at or behind the line of scrimmage.
Yep.
It's absolutely the most infuriating thing to watch as a fan, because to me it's inexcusable. That's effort. That is nastiness on the offensive line. That is want to. It's one play. Blow your guy off the ball, get 1 yard, get 2 yards. You should be able to do that as a D1 athlete, especially how long most of these offensive linemen have been in the Clemson program. Most of these guys aren't true freshmen. They didn't just show up this year, most of them. Now, a couple of them that played on Saturday did just show up this year. And they may have outplayed people that have been in the program 3 years. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah.
But
I got some thoughts on that.
it's kind of puzzling when you line up and you can't get a yard on 4th and 1, or you can't get 2 yards on 3rd and 2. It's just inexplicable, especially when you have backs like Phil Maffa and Will Shipley in the backfield. It's got to be cleaned up. I mean, this bye week is going to be super important for this offense. They played probably one of their worst games against Wake Forest, although it be against a win. And you much rather learn from a win than you would a loss. It still was not a good feeling as a Clemson fan leading out of that game, heading into a bye week. Because our schedule, let's face it, doesn't get any easier in the back half. It might get a little bit more difficult, depending on how you feel about the teams that we have left. We still have a Notre Dame left. We still have North Carolina left. We still have South Carolina left. We still got Miami. I know they just lost to Georgia Tech, but I don't think that's specifically kind of a identity of who Miami is. I think they're a much better team than they showed against Georgia Tech. Obviously, they had a bad game, obviously, but we do not have an easy schedule heading forward. And if we have any hopes of salvaging this season, we got to get it together on offense, because this defense played outside of their mind on Saturday, and we barely won a game against a very bad Wake Forest team. And I don't mean any disrespect to Wake Forest, but they're just not really good this season. They're missing quite a few of their key pieces that they had last season. A.T. Perry, Sam Hartman. You can list all the guys that they lost off of that team last season. They're not the same team. So this should have been a easy win for Clemson, and it just wasn't. So.
No, it wasn't, and that was probably the biggest disappointment. But like you said, defense continues to play really well, and I think that's kind of been lost with the offensive struggles. But I think the defense is really coming to its own. They stood up time and time again. Clemson turned the ball over twice, and the defense surrendered exactly 0 points on those turnovers, which was big considering the result, the final score. So I mean, really say for the, I did have an issue with the final drive, the Clemson's final defensive drive, because there were so many backups in, and I was like, why are personnel wise, in a game where you can still lose, why are you this is not the time to be trying to get a bunch of guys reps. Like, why is Cade Denhoff in there, getting face mask penalties instead of your TJ Parker, Xavier Thomas, Justin Maskell? Like, why don't you have your starters in?
Yeah, you had a Cade Denhoff in there who had 5 snaps total in the game and had a crucial face mask penalty. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah,
it's just
you have Shelton Lewis, on Jamal Banks for whatever reason. A true freshman, Shelton Lewis on Jamal, guarding Jamal Banks at the end of the game. Like, I didn't understand that. The corners I understand a little bit because you were down. Obviously Nate Wiggins, and then Sheridan Jones was sick, and we didn't even find that out till after the game why he wasn't playing.
Right.
So I kind of understand that you were kind of going into your depth a little bit. Jaden Lucas, Toriano Pride, and then Avion Terrell was in was in too. Thought he played pretty well, by the way. But
it's funny because
you had a lot of backups in on that final drive, and I didn't really understand that. But other than that, defense played great. They were the reason Clemson.
It's funny because Shelton Lewis had 1 snap, and it wasn't great. So
yeah,
shout out to him. He's a freshman; he'll be okay. But yeah, when you look at the snap breakdown for Wake Forest, he had 1 snap.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it was not a good snap for him.
You don't put you put him on their best receiver.
Right. Like, wait, what is the thought process behind that? That makes no sense. That's kind of like I attribute that to the same thing. One of the most infuriating things that I've seen from the Clemson defense. I think the Clemson defense has been great this season. But going prevent right before the half for Florida State and just letting them drive right down the field.
Only
That's
rushing 3.
kind of attributed to that sort of mentality. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Why are you going away from what is working? This game was not like it wasn't like it was a 3-touchdown game, and you could just empty the bench and get young guys, some reps and get some stuff on film that you could teach them from heading into the offseason. That would be one thing. It wasn't. Wake Forest goes down and scores that touchdown, and it's within 5 points. And then we got to recover an onside kick in order to, for Cade to kneel and end the game. So
I know people have been upset with Hamp Green, but shout out to him on the hands team for
shout out
coming
to
down
him.
with that one. But
he only played 3 snaps in the game. I know everybody's focusing on Hamp Green playing. He literally played 3 snaps in the game outside of special teams. So
it was just crucial snaps.
I get it.
Run a screen to it was a screen, and then obviously the miscue, down the field. The only shot that Clemson took the entire game was to him. You're just like, what are we doing?
Why would you take it to that guy? Yeah, I get that. But at the end of the day, it's a win for Clemson. I think we can turn the page on this Wake Forest game. It was not a pretty win. It was not comfortable for us Clemson fans watching by any means. But at the end of the day, we have to turn the page. We have to really focus on this bye week, in my opinion. We got a lot of work to do during this bye week, and we'll get into it. We'll start heading into the grades by position and talk more about the personnel groups at specific positions. But any sort of bows that you want to put on this Wake Forest game before we kind of turn the page?
We didn't really get into it, but I'll say, I think the offense executed a little bit better in the second half, as we mentioned. I think based off of what I saw in the Wake Forest game, I think I think there's a starting 5 on the offensive line that I think this team needs to move forward with.
So do I. I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, we might. We haven't talked about this beforehand, so if we have different answers, that'll be interesting. But I think I have a feeling we might be on the same page here. But I thought they did a little bit better job. Shipley and Moffa, he had some really big runs. Shipley looked a little bit more like himself in that second half. That was good to see. Moffa had that big run late. Like you said, the box score, rushing, you finished with 200 rushing yards, but it didn't feel like that because you weren't good in short yardage, and you only rushed for 40 something in the first half. So that was brutal.
And like I said, I mean, I realize our rushing yards aren't bad this season, but when we need them the most, they're just not there. That's the biggest complaint for our rushing stats this season. Like when you look at them as a whole, you're like, somebody from the outside looking in, listening to us right now, they'd be like, what are they complaining about? Their rushing stats are fine. Yeah, but you're not watching every single game that Clemson plays.
Right.
And
situationally, this is not a good
situationally, our running game is terrible.
Yeah. When Shipley had that big, in the second half, when Shipley had that big run and was in stop short, like I'm sure you and I both were like, oh man, we're not going to get there.
Here we go.
Man, if only he had scored there, because we're not going to get it.
We're not going to get it.
Settle for 3 or something, or even worse, turn it over on downs, because we've done that a few times too.
Yeah, we've definitely.
That's the sad part. Is that we get down to the 2 yard line, and we're like, oh well, we didn't punch it in from farther out, so we're probably not going to get it, because this team can't do it in short yardage.
And the other thing to kind of cap this Wake Forest before we get into kind of the positional grades is, turnovers, man. They continue to be a problem for this Clemson. I know we keep talking about it, but at this point, I don't even believe myself anymore when I say it, that they're going to play themselves out of this, that somehow, Clemson is going to get this turnover bug off of their back, if you will, or anything like that. I don't even believe myself anymore when I say it, because every single game in and game out, we have these really bad worst moment, inexplicable turnovers. You think about the mesh point on the RPO for Cade. That's been all too often this season. I think he leads the FBS in fumbles lost. And then you think about the punt to Tyler Brown where he muffed that punt. And, both of them happened in the first half. Luckily, the defense, had enough will, had enough stamina, had enough wherewithal to keep Wake Forest off the board. Because otherwise, I don't know how that game could have gone differently if that didn't happen. Um, and then, something interesting that Garrett Riley said this week, and this is kind of where I'll kind of end this Wake Forest thing, and then you can kind of put a bow on it for us. But he said something in his interview this week, and I don't know if you watched his interview, but he said that the biggest thing with this offense is inconsistency. And that's something that we already know. But he kind of went a little bit deeper in saying that we're playing with 10 far too often on the offensive side of the ball. And it's not always the same guy, but I feel like it's mostly probably the offensive line and maybe the receiving core, where there's just a guy missing almost on every single play. And it just hampers this offense to a point where we cannot get in a rhythm. I think he spoke pretty frankly when he talked to the media this week, which I enjoy as a fan. Let's not sugarcoat things. The offense has been not good. He was asked about, why doesn't this look like TCU's offense? And he's like, look, we got the personnel we got. And to me, that states that, guys aren't quite stepping up in the places that they need to step up, whether that be offensive line, whether it be wide receiver, whether it be quarterback at times, whether it be running back. There's guys not stepping up on each and every play almost is kind of what he was saying in my mind. And so kind of what are your thoughts on that? And then let's put a bow on this Wake Forest so we can transition to the position groups.
Yeah, I did listen to that Garrett Riley interview, and I just it kind of confirmed what Clemson fans kind of feared, and that this off. I mean, what he had at TCU was better than what we have right now. Maybe not in terms of star rating and all of that, but go back to TCU. He had a lot of experienced guys. He had a 6-year quarterback, veteran offensive line. A first-round receiver, a couple more, really, really good receivers, 2 1,000-yard running backs. It was just an offense that personnel-wise was experienced. They had good talent in the places they needed to have good talent, and they were just full of really good football players. I think we have talented players, but I don't think that this offense is. I don't think all 11 starters are good football players right now.
No,
and that's the biggest difference. And so that's kind of what that is the too long didn't read. Garrett Riley gave a too long didn't read version of what I just said.
Basically, yep.
Just the personnel is just not as good. It not like I said, not doesn't mean not as talented, but it's not as good, and that's pretty apparent right now. And that's something that we have to live with. You can't do anything about it now, but it was refreshing to hear that from a staff member, especially one of your coordinators, because you didn't hear that from Brandon Streeter last year. You never really heard stuff like that from Jeff Scott or Tony Elliott. Obviously, the offenses they had were in better shape most of the time, where they wouldn't really have to say that. But that was pretty telling, and kind of just a look into how he feels about what he's working with right now. He's like, well, we don't have good football players everywhere. We've got talent, but we don't have good football players everywhere, and that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, ton of work to do, man, and we're about to get into it position group by position group. So shout out to everybody in the comment section here. We got 26 people in the live chat. Please go ahead and get in, okay? We are about to switch gears and change segments to our grades for each position group. We are going to go position group by position group, starting with the offensive side of the ball, ending with the defensive side of the ball. I want you to get your grades in. Me and Jordan will reveal our grades. We have not rehearsed this at all. We haven't talked about this other than a simple text message. Hey, we're going to give grades on each position group. That's kind of how it goes with us. We like to do it live, so it's a raw, authentic kind of reaction for you guys. So I want to start with the offensive line. Okay. I think we may be on the same page here. We may not be on the same page here. But specifically, I want to talk about the offensive line and their inability to perform consistently this year. The running game, although they've put up okay stats so far this season, we talked about it kind of going through the Wake Forest game and previous games in the past. There's no short yardage running game here. They're inconsistent in short yardage, pretty much non-existent in short yardage. They're inconsistent in the pass game. We're kind of playing these musical chairs that we have seemed to play over the past 2 or 3 seasons, and it has not worked out well for the Clemson Tigers. But heading into this off week, or this bye week, if you will, I feel like Clemson may have nailed down in this Wake Forest game, although it wasn't pretty, although it wasn't a great game, I think we may have seen our starting 5 start to consistently be on the field together in the second half. And maybe we can start building some continuity within those 5 players. So I'll let you go ahead and go first with the offensive line. And tell me who you think our starting 5 will be heading out of the bye week. Tell me what your grade is for this offensive line 6 weeks into the season. And then I will give my thoughts after you.
Yeah. I think we did find the 5 that I think. Now, I don't necessarily think this is the 5 that will trot out against Miami next week. That is, I'm going to give a caveat, but I think this is the 5 that me personally, based off of my rewatch, my first watch of the game and my rewatch, I think this starting 5, I think is probably the one that Clemson needs to move forward with. I think you need to go ahead and insert Colin Sadler as the left tackle. I think I think that's something that just they function a little bit better. He has a little bit more nastiness, mean streak. He's a little bit more physical, coming out of his stance than Tristan Lay. And I think that you saw the run plays be a little bit more successful with him in the game, especially in that second half. I think you keep the interior, at least I think you 2 of the 3 guys on the interior you keep the same. I think Will Putnam and Marcus Tate are obviously your starters at center and left guard respectively. Right guard, we talked a lot about it. It's been pretty definitively the weakest part of this team. And you saw 3 guys get a lot of rotation on Saturday at that spot. You saw Mitchell Mays in there, you saw Trent Howard in there, and you saw Harris Sewell. I think Harris Sewell gives you the best. I think he gives you the best chance. He's a freshman. He's going to make mistakes. I think he had a false start penalty at one point in that game. But I think he looks the best and the most physical off the ball. I think you have to go ahead and keep him, put him in, and let him get his reps and take his lumps, because I think the offensive line, the guys that he's competing with are guys that have been in the program. Mitchell Mays is a senior. He is what he is at this point. Trent Howard is kind of the same. I believe he's a junior, a third-year guy. Those guys I think those guys kind of are what they are. That I don't really see the upside there. I think Harris Sewell gives you the best opportunity, and because this season isn't really this season, there's not a whole lot to play for from a championship perspective this year. I think you need to go ahead and plan for the future. Go ahead and let Harris Sewell be the guy at right guard, and I think you keep right tackle the same with Blake Miller. So that's my 5: Colin Sadler, Marcus Tate, Will Putnam, Harris Sewell, and Blake Miller. I think that's the 5 you got to go with. You're muted.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. I forgot to give my grade too.
Yeah. What is your grade so far for the offensive line this season, and where do you want to see them improve the most?
Well, it's probably obvious where I want them to improve the most, but my grade for this offensive line is I'm going to go with a D plus. I'm gonna go ahead and D because I'm gonna go with a D because you see, nope. I'm gonna stick with it. You know what? I'm gonna go with a D plus. I'm sticking with a D plus because I will give them the benefit of the doubt. I think pass pro has gotten better. I thought they've blocked better in the passing game in recent weeks. So I think that's been fine, but the run blocking has been a consistent problem. The only reason I gave a plus, it would have been a D, but the only reason I gave them a plus is because, Walker Parks is out for the year, and that definitely doesn't help. But yeah, I think this is I think this is the weakest part of the team so far. It has not been very consistent, and they have to improve because this offense can't function when they're not playing well. If you have one guy miss an assignment, that can blow up an entire play, and we've just seen that far too often so far this year.
Yeah, so absolutely. Look, Jordan, we are on the same page, brother. Look, you make some great points. This offense is literally predicated off the run game. I know Garrett Riley runs kind of the spread offense, and I know he's known for kind of attacking the middle of the field and downfield passing and all of this stuff. But all of those things that Garrett Riley does fundamentally are predicated off of the run game, a consistent run game that can run, especially in short yardage situations when you need it the most. And this offensive line has not been able to do that. And to your point, man, I agree with your starting 5. I think Clemson has found their starting 5. I think they should stick to it. I think these 5 guys should get the majority of the snaps, if not all of the snaps. I'll give you a snap breakdown from the Wake game because I looked it up before we came on the show, specifically because my thoughts were the same as yours, and I wanted to confirm them by my stats, right? I'm not really a stat guy, but I just kind of wanted some hard numbers to confirm what I thought. And I think this will tell you that the Clemson coaching staff is starting to feel the same way that we are feeling as fans. If you agree with me and Jordan. If you don't, then maybe they won't. But Blake Miller played 70 snaps. He played every single offensive snap possible at right tackle. Okay? No problems with that. He's been up and down the season. He's had his issues, but I think he's the best option at right tackle that we have currently. So go ahead and leave Blake Miller there. Let him play all the snaps. Don't take him out, right? You got Mitchell Mays. This is a guy that has been filling in for Walker Parks since he has gone out. You have seen his snap count dwindle over the past couple weeks. It was all the way down to 8 snaps. 8 snaps against Wake Forest. 8 snaps against Wake Forest. Harris Sewell had 62 snaps against Wake Forest. So he came in and played majority of the game. So I think he's your best option at right guard. And then center. Obviously, you got Will Putnam. He played every single snap of the offensive plays. He played 70 snaps. So no problems there. Will Putnam has probably been one of our best offensive linemen this season, maybe outside of Marcus Tate. And then at left guard, you got
Marcus Tate.
At left guard, you got Marcus Tate, who played 70 snaps in the game. So Will Putnam, Marcus Tate, and Blake Miller played every snap in the game Saturday at offensive line. So those 3 positions, just by the breakdown of the snaps, are solidified. We don't need to talk about center. We don't need to talk about left guard. We don't need to talk about right tackle. Right? And then you talk about left tackle. Tristan Lay got 25 snaps. Colin Sadler got 45 snaps. That snap gap between Tristan Lay and Colin Sadler have been growing over the past couple weeks. It's been going more and more in the favor of Colin Sadler. So in my mind, you just need to plug him in there and let him get his reps. Let him become the sole starter at left tackle because I think he's proven that he's better than Tristan Lay. Because why else would the snap count be trending in his direction, right? And then obviously on Saturday, Harris Sewell obviously got the majority of the snaps at right guard. And although he made his mistakes, although he had the false start penalty and all of those things, I think if you play Blake Miller, Harris Sewell, Will Putnam, Marcus Tate, and Colin Sadler, I think that's your best combination of offensive linemen heading forward for the Clemson team. And yes, I realize that Colin Sadler is a redshirt freshman. I realize that Harris Sewell is a true freshman. I don't care. I don't care. I would rather roll the dice with those guys than guys that have been in the program 3+ years and still making the same mistakes that Harris Sewell went out there and made on Saturday. He just showed up this season. He made the same mistakes that a Mitchell Mays has made last season, this season, no progression whatsoever. Why are you still trotting him out on the field? I know he only got 8 snaps. That's why I say Harris Sewell, he's your right guard. He's your right guard. Colin Sadler's your left tackle. The other 3 positions are already locked in. So let's roll with those 5 and let the mistakes lie where they are. Let them get their reps. Let those 5 get their continuity. And just let's see where they take us. Because I think if you start playing those guys every single snap of the game, they may start building some continuity. And by the end of the season, they may look like a completely different offensive line. So we agree on the 5, 100%. I hope that that's the starting 5 heading out against Miami. I'll be disappointed if it's not. I'm not convinced that it will be like you, but I think it should be. And I don't really see a viable option or a viable reason for why it wouldn't be our starting 5 heading out against Miami after this bye week.
Especially given the snap counts, yeah.
So those are your snap counts from Wake Forest. So I think that tells us that the Clemson coaching staff is starting to see some of the same things that we are seeing. So I expect that to be the starting 5 heading into Miami game. I'll be disappointed if it's not.
Yep. So what's your final grade? What's your midseason grade on this group?
I'm going to be generous, a little bit more generous than you. I'm going to go C- for the offensive line. I'm building in the injury to Walker Parks. I think he was a huge, key, crucial position, just like we saw last year when Walker Parks went down. It definitely affected this offensive line. I think it's affected them again this season. And I think it's just proven that we don't have a true right guard outside of Walker Parks. And Harris Sewell is going to have to be that guy this year, in my opinion.
Yep.
So for those reasons, I'm going to give them a C- on the offensive line. They have not been great. They have a ton of improvement that they need to, do. But, at the end of the day, we got to roll with the best 5. And I think this kind of musical chairs that we have been playing on the offensive line in 2021, 2022 has not served us particularly well. As you can see by the development of guys that have been here 3 years. They don't seem to have developed at all. So I think rolling with a starting 5 may bode us a little bit better by the end of the season, and then obviously heading into the 2024 season. So, with all of that said, I'll go with a C minus, and then we'll transition to the running back room. So, running back grades for the 2023 season through 6 games. Um, what are your thoughts on the running back so far?
Yeah, yeah. This one's kind of difficult because so much of a running back's how a running back is viewed is some of it has to do with how well their offensive line blocks for them. Um, I'm going to go with a B. That's kind of what I feel. I think they've been good. They haven't been. It hasn't been the to the degree that we thought maybe heading into the season. I think part of that, a lot of that has to do with the run blocking, but I don't think Will Shipley has played as well as he possibly could have. Wow, we're on the exact same page, brother. There we go. Yeah, that's kind of where I feel. I think they've been good, and they've been good, and with a better offensive line, maybe the grade would be higher. But I don't think Will Shipley has played as well as he can at times. Pass pro, there's been some lapses there. They haven't really been as effective in the passing game as the coaching staff, tried to make it seem like. But all in all, I think they've been a really good group, and so I'm feeling a B.
Yeah, and look, I showed you what I wrote down previous to us coming on the show, and I wrote a B as well. And what I will say about the running back room is I think it's been somewhat of a disappointment this season. I thought that the running back room, if you would have asked me preseason through week 6, what my grade of the running back room would have been, I would have probably went at least an A, maybe an A plus. But right now I'm at a B, and I feel like I'm being sort of generous with the B. And some of that probably goes into what you were stating about the offensive line and their inability to run block in certain situations, especially short yardage situations. However, I feel like Will Shipley this season has struggled with vision, field vision this year, more so than any other year that he's donned a Clemson helmet. Um, and I don't really know what that is. I don't know if it's an impatience. I don't know if it's attributed to the offensive line. And, he's just kind of frustrated with their blocking, and he's just trying to kind of rush things and force things in the running game. I think that could be part of it. Phil Maffa has obviously had his fumbling issues early in the season this year, so I can't go any higher for him as well. Um, but what I will say is Phil Maffa has been much more of a threat outside of the backfield catching the ball than I thought he would be this season. I thought Will Shipley would be more of the pass catcher. Phil Maffa would be more of the downhill rusher. But Phil Maffa has showed that he is a definitely capable pass catcher out of the backfield. He has showed in recent weeks that he can kind of get over some of those fumbles that happened early in the season. So I do have a lot of hope for our running back room heading forward. I do think some of their struggles are definitely a result of the lack of continuity, the lack of push on the offensive line. But I do think some of it is them as well. Pass blocking has been a problem for both of them. Phil Maffa has whiffed on a bunch of, or on quite a few pass blocks. None more than the than that big one for Cade Klubnik where it was a kind of sack fumble, return for a touchdown. But Will Shipley has done the same exact thing as well. I think Will Shipley sometimes lets his emotions get the best of him in a game. And although it's good to have a player that plays with emotion and allows that to kind of fuel him, I think sometimes he allows it to kind of be a detriment to his game. So I think he's got to rein that in a little bit. But I feel really good about our running back room. I'm going to go ahead and give him a B, just like you did. Um, Although, I think there's room for improvement for all the reasons that I stated. I think we're in a good place in our running back room. So let's go ahead and shift gears to our wide receiver room. And frankly, it's a mixed bag at the wide receiver room. It is a mixed bag. I think Antonio Williams started off okay this season. Obviously, he's been injured the past couple weeks. He hasn't been on the field. And Tyler Brown's been kind of a breath of fresh air for the wide receiver room. He kind of broke out. He was, kind of a guy where we were like, whoa, can this be the guy this season? And then in the Wake Forest game, Tyler Brown kind of came back down to earth a little bit. He kind of got keyed on a little bit, and part of that is you had quite a few big games in a row, and now a defense is paying attention to you, and that's something that can give freshmen quite a bit of difficulty. I think Bo Collins has been adequate this season. I don't think he's been great. I don't think he's been a wide receiver one. I don't think he's been any sort of game breaker, but I think he's been okay. I still look to Bo Collins to kind of come out of his shell a little bit more, be a little bit more aggressive. I think I saw a little bit of that in the Wake Forest game, kind of putting his big body in front of the ball and the defender and making some tough catches. Troy Stellato has been a breath of fresh air this season in the wide receiving core. And, he was a guy that talked about, heading out of fall camp from Dabo Swinney, who, he was like, hey, we're not counting on Troy Stellato. He hasn't been available. He's never available. If he's available, it'll be a plus to the offense. Well, guess what? We have needed Troy Stellato this season. And thank God that he showed up and he's healthy and he looks hungry. So that's been a good part of the wide receiving core. Now let's get to some of the issues of the wide receiver core. Adam Randall. I'm not really sure what is going on with Adam Randall. I think his snap count went down to 5 or 8 or something like that in the Wake Forest game. He's really kind of been sidelined at this point as a wide receiver, and I'm not really sure why. I know he hasn't played well, and I don't know why, because is it his multiple knee surgeries that he's had in his first year at Clemson? Is it he's just not trusting those knees anymore? Does he not have the explosiveness that he used to have? I mean, you can think back to Adam Randall before he had any knee injuries coming out of that first fall camp last season. And the coaching staff were gushing about this guy. They were like, this dude is going to be an absolute baller for this Clemson offense. And then he suffers a knee injury and has a surgery. Suffers another injury, has another surgery. So maybe it's more of a mental thing with Adam Randall at this point. Maybe not. I'm just speculating at this point. But Adam Randall has certainly been a disappointment as far as the wide receiving core goes. So, for all of those reasons, I give the wide receiving core a C+. I think there's been some bright spots. I think there's been some lackluster performances by some guys that we were really counting on coming into this season, and they just haven't, they haven't produced to this point. So, what do you think about the wide receiving core?
We're on the exact same page again. I think a C+ is fair. I think you've had some guys step up that you weren't exactly, expected to rely on. As you mentioned, Tyler Brown and Troy Stellato have offered some really nice, have grown into really nice pieces for Clemson. Bo Collins, I think, has been, like you said, I think Bo Collins has been fine. He hasn't been spectacular. I think the drops haven't been as big of a problem this year, so I think that that's something to be commended. The receivers aren't like just they're not just dropping easy stuff like they did at times the past couple of years. But beyond that, you still haven't been particularly explosive. I do think some of that is having a young and inexperienced quarterback that's still learning how to do that. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt there, at least a little bit. But yeah, the wide receivers have been serviceable. They've had some good moments at times. But they haven't been spectacular. And you like you mentioned that we've had some disappointments. Cole Turner being out for the year is not great. Adam Randall's been a huge disappointment. And I have to ding them when you have I a little bit when you have Hamp Green coming in and playing meaningful snaps, even if it's just a couple. That's that's not ideal. So yeah, for that reason, yeah, I think C+ is fair. They've been, they haven't been terrible. They've had some nice moments here or there, but just they're not a spectacular group.
Yeah, it's just not consistent at this point. They had some really high highs and some really low lows. You got Cole Turner out for the season. You have Antonio Williams out for a couple weeks. You've had other guys hampered with, different injuries here and there. It's a mixed bag when it comes to the wide receiving core. I think there are some reasons to be optimistic for them. But honestly, and you tell me if I'm wrong. We're missing a number one wide receiver in this group. No one has established themselves as a number one wide receiver, and for that reason, their grade cannot be any higher, in my opinion, than a C+. If you don't have a wide receiver one that at the end of the day in a big game can come take over and be like, hey, when we need X amount of yards, I'll run my freaking route and you throw it to me. I don't care who the DB is. I'm going to get it. We don't have that guy right now. Maybe we got that guy next year in some of the recruits that we have coming in. But right now, Clemson's wide receiving core is lacking that wide receiver one. We have a bunch of guys that can be, wide receiver two. We don't have a wide receiver one currently. So it is what it is. As we approach, as we are through 6 weeks of the season, I don't think a wide receiver one is going to emerge at this point. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I just don't think there is.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same. They're just not. They're not. I mean, I guess they're slightly. They can be slightly above average at times, but that's about where we're at.
Shout out to Brian Wesco and TJ Moore. Hurry up.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to the next position group. Jordan, we've been on here an hour and 10 minutes. And we ain't even through the offense yet. So let's keep moving on. Tight end for the Clemson Tigers. I got a lot to say about the tight end position for the Clemson Tigers. Coming into the season, listening to all of the chatter from Clemson coaches, Clemson players, all of that, coming into the season, I truly thought that Jake Brenningstool was going to be a breakout player this season. I thought he was going to be a matchup nightmare. I thought they were going to get him on mismatches with linebackers and defensive ends and really attack the middle of the field. And that hasn't come to fruition this season. Jake Brenningstool has been on a freaking milk carton the entire season. And frankly, when he does catch the ball, he can't break any tackles. He's freaking 6'6", and he's getting tackled by freaking 5'8", 5'9" DBs and cornerbacks and safeties like it's their job. It's absolutely frustrating to me. I think he should be more physical. And then Sage Enos, he's had minimal opportunities this season. Maybe he's the better option. I don't know. I know he's definitely the better option when it comes to the running game and run blocking and things like that. But, I'm starting to think that maybe we should give Sage Enos some more opportunities than we are giving a Jake Brenningstool. And I'll give you kind of the breakdown for the tight end position in the Wake Forest game. Jake Brenningstool had 61 snaps. Sage Enos only had 19. So Jake Brenningstool is still getting the massive bulk of the snaps for the Clemson Tigers. And I just don't know if that's warranted at this point. Is it a scheme thing with the Clemson Tigers? Is it a Jake Brenningstool thing? Is he not getting open? Is he not physical enough? Is he not athletic enough? What is the deal with the tight end position? Because I honestly, heading into the season, I'm just going to be honest, I expected more from the tight end position.
A lot more. Yeah, I'm with you. And you pretty much summed it up perfectly. I mean, Jake Brenningstool has been a pretty disappointing aspect of the offense up to this point. He's had a couple of nice moments, but doesn't offer much as a blocker. I mean, we knew that going into the season. That's just he's the frame he has. That's just, I mean, it's not for lack of trying. I don't think. I just don't think he's that one of those guys that's really built to do it. But the problem is he's not giving you what you need as a pass catching option, and then you're like, well, then why is he even out here? Because at that point, he's just somebody out there running cardio or getting completely blown up in blocking. Like it just, this group has been pretty disappointing. I don't want to give them an F. That feels harsh. But I got to go like a D- or a D or a D-. They've been pretty unremarkable. And I think a lot of that has to do with Jake Brenningstool. I think Sage Ennis has, when he does play, he does offer some nice blocking ability in the run game. And I think when you saw him in there, I think Clemson had a little bit more success running the football. He even caught a pass. So that was good to see. That was nice to see as well. But we don't really know what we have in him yet. But like you said, he might be the better option. Because at least he does offer something in the as a blocker. But this group has just not been. And we've seen basically none of Josh Sapp and even less of the true freshmen. Olsen Pat Henry and Marcus Dixon. A group that we thought was going to be that could potentially be a really nice strength for this offense has been a nothing burger and at times a liability. So that's why they get a D-, I think, for me. I'll be generous and not give it an F.
I'm going to go a full-on F. I'm going to be completely honest with the tight end position. I'm just just based off of what I thought coming into the season, I can't give them any more than that because I thought they were going to be a major part of this offense, and they've been less than an afterthought of this offense. And I don't think it's a lack of Garrett Riley trying. I do think it's a personnel issue with Clemson right now. And I think Jake Brenningstool's obviously at the head of that. I think it may be time, after the bye week to maybe give Sage Ennis some more reps. I know he may not be quite as athletic as Jake Brenningstool, but at the end of the day, what is that athleticism supposedly that Jake Brenningstool had giving us for this offense? It's giving us poor blocking and no pass catching at this point. So at the end of the day, maybe it's time to give Sage Ennis some more reps. Maybe I'm wrong. That's just me from the outside looking in as a fan. But let's kind of transition into Cade Klubnik. Let's transition to the quarterback position, and we'll round out the offense with the quarterback position. Cade Klubnik, to me, has been up and down this season. Okay, he's had some really great moments. He's had some really bad moments. As I previously mentioned, he leads the FBS in fumbles lost. Mesh point on these RPOs seem to be a continuing issue for him. I don't know if it's an indecision type of deal. I don't know if it's him and the running back not being on the same page. I'm not really sure what it is, but it's become a trend at this point. It's not an anomaly. This offense has turned the ball over far too many times on these mesh point type plays on these RPOs for it to be an anomaly. So it's something that they have to work on in this bye week. It's something that they have to get cleaned up for sure, because going forward, that's not going to be acceptable. You'll lose to Miami. You'll lose to Notre Dame. you will lose to North Carolina and you will lose to South Carolina if you continue that sort of trend that Clemson has been doing. So um, I think maybe this Wake Forest game was probably one of Cade's more inaccurate games when it came to some of the easy layup passes that he missed in this game. I'm not really sure what that was. I don't know if he was amped up. I don't know if he just wasn't focused. And he even said it in his post game interview that this was probably his worst game of the season, as far as from an accuracy standpoint, and as far as from his ability to get the ball to the point where it needed to be. Um, and I think he's grown a lot this season so far. And I think we put a lot of pressure on Cade. And, that's just part of what comes for being a quarterback for Clemson, one of the top programs in the nation, in my opinion, still. That's just kind of what you buy when you come to a place like Clemson. You're going to be scrutinized. The quarterback position is a position where everyone is going to see your mistakes. Guess what? Everybody watching a football game doesn't know what a left guard mistake looks like. Everybody doesn't know what a tight end mistake looks like, or a wide receiver to the field running the wrong route looks like. We don't know what that looks like. Most college football fans don't know what that looks like. But guess what? We do know what quarterback mistakes look like. So it's one of the most scrutinized positions. I think he has handled himself well. I think he's grown well throughout the season. I think he's built a couple starts together. Wake Forest was probably not his greatest game. Duke was certainly not a good game for him. But he did have a couple games sandwiched in between those two games where he played pretty well. He's progressed. I think he's become more comfortable in the pocket. I think he needs to become a bigger part of the running game. I think he needs to have more of a pocket presence heading forward, and that's something that he can work on in the bye week. But I'm going to give Cade a B so far this season for his play on the field.
Wow, I think this might be the first time we have a bigger this might be the biggest discrepancy we have all night. I'm gonna just go ahead and say my grade. I'm gonna go with a C for Cade. I think the thing is you've seen the great moments have been really, really great, and you've seen the wow moments, you've seen the talent. He's had some really just eye popping throws. Got off he plays off schedule, outside the pocket. He's made plays within the pocket, stepped up, made some big plays, made plays with his legs. So you see those moments, and then it's he follows it up with just a really bad inaccurate throw, or an interception, or a near interception, or the fumbles obviously are the big thing. And I think the highs are really high and the lows are really low, and because of that, I think it averages out to a C. Like, it's just the bad moments are really, really bad, and sometimes sometimes really hurt you in a game, and then other than some of the bigger ones, and then the high moments, like, wow, man, you see the talent. And I think that just kind of averages Cade out into, I think he's an average Power 5 starting quarterback right now. Maybe slightly above average. So you could argue a C+, but I'm gonna stick with C because I think the progression has been there, from the start of the season, but it hasn't been linear, and it hasn't been, steady progression. He's taken a step back here or there, but then, you say, okay, well, he improved here. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think a C for Cade is where I'm at. He's been fine on the as a whole, but not spectacular, and he's still growing. So I think C is fine. That's where I'm at. You're muted.
I could see that. Maybe I'm a little being a little generous with my B, but
No, I totally see where, but I think it seems like we're with the quarterback position, we're grading a little bit on a different scale. So that,
Yeah. So let's give our overall score for the offense to this point, and then we'll turn the page to the defensive side of the ball. For the offense, I'm going C minus,
that's where
maybe
I'm at.
C minus.
That's where I'm at.
With everything we talked about, I think C minus is kind of the best you could kind of put this offense at.
Yeah.
It hasn't been great. It's had its moments, like we've said, but a ton of improvement to be had.
Yeah.
And hopefully they get it figured out. I think it starts on the offensive side of the ball with them, especially the offensive line. I hope that they just start repping these 5 guys for majority of the snaps. I really do.
Yeah.
I think that could be the difference in the offense in the first half of this season and the second half of this season. I may be wrong, but I'm willing to roll the dice with Harris, Sewell, and
Colin Sadler.
Colin Sadler. I'm willing to roll the dice with those guys. I think Colin Sadler has separated himself to a point. I think Harris Sewell is maybe not a better option as far as play right now, but he's younger. So I'd rather roll with him, let him make his freshman mistakes, and develop into a real offensive lineman. That's just me. And we'll turn the page over to the defense. Okay. We'll roll with obviously the defensive line first. Jordan, how do you see this defensive line playing so far? I know there's a lot to talk about in the defensive tackle position. There's a ton of really, really good players that you can, name by name there. And then obviously, I think the defensive end position has been maybe a little bit better than we thought it would be to this point this season.
Yeah, I would agree.
You tell me what you think, and then I'll get in with my grade after you.
Yeah, I'm feeling an A for the defensive line. I think this is they haven't really been. I mean, I guess the Duke game they had some pretty rough moments at times, but since then they've been really, really good. They've played up to expectations. Some guys have played higher than expected. Especially you mentioned the defensive end position. I think. I think Xavier Thomas is playing good football right now. I think Justin Maskell is playing good football, and I was one of the ones that was not sold on him heading into the year, but he's playing the best football of his career right now. I think defensive line has been good. A is where I'm at, and they've racked up the sacks in recent weeks too, and they've just been really good. Defensive tackles have been. You almost don't notice them because they're not like getting the sacks and all the TFLs, but they've just been so disruptive between Tyler Davis, Ruka Roro, Peter Woods, even the backups. You've seen a lot more. You've seen a lot more Demonte Capehart, Peyton Page, seeing those guys kind of get in. It's a deep defensive tackle room, and then I already mentioned I didn't even mention T.J. Parker off the edge as well. He's been one of the best true freshman defensive linemen in the country. I mean, him and Peter Woods, but especially T.J. Parker with just how many impact plays he's made. So defensive line gets an A. I think they've been good.
Absolutely.
Really good.
I 100% agree with you. I had our defensive line as an A for sure. Like that's a solid A in my opinion. The defensive line has been playing more than well this season. Starting with the defensive tackles, I mean, we got just an embarrassment of riches along the defensive tackle position. I mean, you can roll in Tyler Davis, Ruka Roro, Peyton Page, Peter Woods. You got all these dudes that you can roll in and out every single play, keep them fresh. And like you say, they don't show up on the stat sheet in, sacks and all these things that often. But let me tell you, they affect these offenses so much. These defensive tackles have been playing outside of their mind. Shout out to Tyler Davis. This dude is a absolute animal. He is going to go early in the NFL draft this season. I guarantee you. And then you talk about the defensive end position. My boy XT has been getting stronger and stronger every single week. He's not really a run guy, but this dude has been starting to get to the passer. He's been starting to put pressure on the quarterback way more consistently in the weeks as the season's been going on. TJ Parker, I mean, come on, this dude might be one of the Clemson greats by the time that he leaves. He started off hot. I don't know what his career at Clemson entails, but he looks to be the real deal. Justin Maskell, you mentioned, got 22 snaps on Saturday. He's started to really progress, man. Like, much like you, I was kind of a skeptic heading into the season for Justin Maskell, but I think he's played really, really well. Um, so and then you mentioned Capehart and all those dudes, man. Like, we got a ton, like we got a rags to riches of defensive linemen to roll in and out. I'm definitely an A on the defensive line grade. I think they definitely struggled early in the season, specifically against Duke. They got pressure, but they never really got there. And then the second game of the season, they got pressure, but they never really got there. But they've started to stack sacks the last couple games of this season, specifically against Syracuse. I think they got 4 or 5 against Wake Forest. They've really started to kind of capitalize on the pressure that they've gotten and really get the quarterback down to the ground. So for all of those reasons, I think the DL line is a 100% A grade for me. Now let's shift our focus to the back seven, or to the back portion, the linebacker portion of the defensive group. Now, this portion of the front seven of the Clemson defense has been a little more up and down this season than I originally thought they would be. You got what we thought would be an All-American in Jeremiah Trotter and Barrett Carter. We talked about them preseason as being the best linebacker duo in the country. And just to be frank, they haven't really lived up to that. I think they've had splashes of greatness this season. I think you can point to Barrett Carter having some great coverage on the wheel route against Florida State. I think that you can point to various points this season so far of Jeremiah Trotter really getting it done. But I mean, if I'm being honest, between Jeremiah Trotter, Barrett Carter, and Wade Woodaz, I think our linebacker core has been, somewhat lackluster this season. I think they have not lived up to their preseason hype that was kind of dawned on them, that was kind of bestowed upon them before they started this season. We were thinking that we had 2 All-Americans at linebacker heading into the season. And frankly, that just hasn't come to fruition. There's been some tackling problems in the linebacking core. There's been some bust in coverage, obviously, specifically on wheel routes. We have struggled. I did not see this linebacking core struggling as much as they have this season. What are your kind of thoughts on the linebacker core, and what's your grade for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think you summed it up pretty well. I think the linebackers, I think they played a little bit better the past I think they played a lot better on Saturday. But yeah, it's kind of been it's been an up and down. I wouldn't say up and down. I think largely they've been good, but they've had some lapses where they just haven't been great. And it depends on how you. I guess my grade, it depends on whether I want to grade on expectation or grade on just overall play. I'm gonna go with a B minus. I'll be generous.
Okay.
I think B minus. I think largely they've been good. They have not, been as the spectacular group that we thought, heading into the season so far. But they've been good enough, and with the front, the front four playing as well as they have this year, I think that definitely alleviates some of the pressure on them. So I think that it gives them a little bit more leeway. So I'll go B minus for the linebackers. They've been solid, pretty good. Just they've had some elite moments and some elite play, stretches, but they have not been consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. I went with a B for the linebacking core, a little bit above what you went into, but I think they've done pretty well. But I'll go with a B for them. Let's transition to safeties so far this season. I think safety has been a surprising position for Clemson this season. Not surprising to the fact that I didn't think we would be pretty good at the safety position, but maybe more surprising to the fact that how consistent we have been at the safety position this season. You think about an RJ Mickens. This dude has been all over the field this season. He's dropped some interceptions that he probably should have had this season. Jaden Phillips has also played a significant amount of snaps. But at the end of the day, our secondary has improved so much. And part of that is the safety's ability to give help to the cornerbacks along with giving help in the running game. And the running game is really something that Clemson has thrived on this season. I think we've held teams through the first 6 games. I think we've held 4 of the first 6 opponents under 100 yards this season. And that's attributed to not only the front 7, but also safety help and their ability to come up in the running game when that gets broken through the second level, and their willingness to tackle. So, I think the safeties and R.J. Mickens, Jalen Phillips, and other guys have been really great. I would give the safeties a B plus to this point in the season.
Yeah, I think the safeties have been. I tend to agree. I think the safeties have been really, really good. It wasn't really surprised. I felt going into the season that this group was in really good shape. I think just because of the experience you had, and you had a little bit more depth in the room, and you just have really good. It's not loaded with high-end NFL talent. I don't think R.J. Mickens or Jalen Phillips are guys that are going to be going in the first, second round, but they're just really good football players, really instinctive. And you've seen, I think that group has just been really, really good. Clemson hasn't given up a ton of explosive plays. I think that's the biggest thing. Last year, I believe Clemson gave up like 4 plays per game of 20+ yards. This year, it's down to like 2.4 through 6 games, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but that is a ton. That is a huge difference. The big plays, teams aren't hitting big plays on Clemson this year, and
no, they're not.
That number so far, that 2.4 number, is the lowest in the college football playoff era for Clemson. So I think because of how poor this team was at giving up explosive plays last year, the improvement they've made. I'm going to go higher than you. I think A minus. That
okay.
I think the safety group has been a strength of this defense. I think they've played really well, and can't really ask much more from them. They've just been really, really good. So A minus for me. I think the improvements they've made have been pretty impressive, from last year as well. So it's a good group.
Absolutely. Transitioning to the cornerback group. This is a group that has been somewhat challenged this season, specifically by injury. Nate Wiggins went out in the Florida State game. Um, you know, I originally thought that Nate Wiggins was going to be out for the season, just judging by the amount of pain that he was on the field, and the way that he wasn't able to walk off on his own power. But it looks to be that we may get him back for the Miami game, maybe the game after that. Who knows? But he's certainly not out for the season. Um, but specifically last week against Wake Forest, Toriano Pride stepped in, and Jaden Lucas stepped in. Jaden Lucas stepped in he's been playing a couple weeks now for Nate Wiggins, and then Toriano Pride last week stepped in on short notice for he didn't know he was starting last week. He came into the locker room, found out he was starting, and this dude went out and played 69 snaps and played his absolute butt off. And this cornerback room, this cornerback room this season has been absolutely, I think, the only thing that I could give them is an A grade. When you look at this cornerback room, when you look at this back end of Clemson's defense last year, and then look at them this year, they're night and day. They're not giving up the big play. They're not allowing wide receivers to get behind them. They're keeping everything in front of them, and they're fighting through balls. When receivers catch balls, they're trying to punch it out. They're physical at the point of attack when it comes to tackling. They are absolutely out physicaling receivers. And sometimes it ends up in pass interference. But at the end of the day in football, you gotta kind of live with that. So for me, this cornerback room is an A for me. It's an A. It's an absolute A for me. I think Nate Wiggins was an absolute baller in the beginning of the season. Obviously, he's been out a couple weeks. But look at Toriano Pride stepping in. Look at Toriano Pride stepping in at short notice and just being ready to go out there and ball out against a Wake Forest team and keep them under wraps, not allow any explosive plays whatsoever Saturday, and absolutely play one of his greatest games. This was a game last year where Toriano Pride got kind of burnt quite a few times. And he came back. It was sort of a revenge game for him. And he showed his progression. He showed his focus and his maturity as a player because he wasn't supposed to start against Wake. He found out at Tiger Walk. He found out when he got into the locker room that, hey, guess what? Other guy can't go. You got to go out there and start today. And he went out there and absolutely balled out. And maybe that's a short-sighted outlook on the cornerback room, but I'd give them an absolute A this season. They've given up no explosive plays this year. This cornerback room has absolutely balled out, and I think we're deep. And that's probably one of the most encouraging things as a Clemson fan watching this defense is we are definitely deep at the cornerback position because I fully expect to lose Nate Wiggins next year. But when you got guys like Toriano Pride that can just step in at any moment and play like he played, it's not that you won't miss Nate Wiggins. It's just that you got other guys that are going to step up and play adequately. So for all of those reasons, I give this cornerback crew so far through 6 games an A for me.
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you. I'm going to go A as well. The group has just been really good, elite at times, and you have a lot of options. We didn't really talk about because the nickel spot is kind of a hybrid. I guess I'll just kind of lump them in with corners since we're talking about. I think the nickel position.
That's what I did as well. Yeah.
I think Andrew Makuba has had a renaissance year, and he's had a really nice bounce back year. And then obviously true freshman Khalil Barnes has stepped in really nicely when in spell of Makuba, and he's been really good. Forced a fumble on Saturday.
You think Makuba heard the noise last season?
Oh, yeah, he most certainly did.
You think he heard it? Because let me tell you, bro.
But he looks in great shape. He looks healthy. He's coming down. He's being physical. He's tackling. He just seems like he's playing more free. So that's good. I just think.
And even a Khalil Barnes said that Makuba's kind of mentoring him. Yeah. When he found out that he was going to have to step in for Makuba, who did he go to? He went to Makuba for help. He was like, "Hey, man, what you got for me? What do I need to do? How do I fill this role?" Right. So that just shows that Makuba has matured as a player, as a leader on this team. There's young guys looking to him, and I think part of Khalil Barnes' success is attributed to Makuba's maturity and his ability to kind of pass that down to kind of the younger generation of players at Clemson. Makuba has played an absolute phenomenal season so far. And I know he's been, hampered a little bit this season, but let me tell you, that dude's a baller, man. So what is your overall grade for the Clemson defense before we move on to unfortunately our special teams? Good Lord. I don't want to talk about it.
That's going to be fun. I'm gonna go with I guess if you average it out, I gave an A to the defensive line, A to the A minus, I think, to the safeties, A to the B minus to the linebackers. I think you got to go A minus. I guess that is kind of roughly what that averages out to. A minus. They've just been really, really good, elite at times, especially given the some of the positions they've been put in by the turnovers on offense. I mean, the Duke game wasn't great. But again, a lot of that was aided by turnovers. But since then, they've been elite. Really only gave up 3 points to the Charleston Southern. So even though it says 17 on the scoreboard, gave up 17 in regulation to an elite Florida State offense. You've shut out everyone. Not shut out, but you've pretty much shut down everyone you've played. They've been a good group. They've had moments and here and there where you're just kind of like, why is?
And let me tell you.
I think all in all, they've been really good, and they're one of the best defenses in the country.
Let me tell you one of the biggest stats for the defense, and I don't need to go into nationally what Clemson's defense is ranked. I think it's ranked 7th right now, so it's a top 10 defense. But this Clemson team has outgained every opponent that they have played.
Yep.
Even though we come in 4-2. We have outgained every single opponent that we have played. Every opponent. So that tells you that our defense has done their job when it comes to winning games. So look no further than that. Week 1, we outgained Duke. Week 2, we outgained CSU. Week 3, we outgained FAU. Week 4, we outgained FSU. Week 5, we outgained Syracuse. Week 6, we outgained Wake Forest. We didn't win every single one of those games, but let me tell you, our defense put us in a position every single one of those games to win. In 2 of those games, the offense didn't get it done. That's why we're sitting at 4-2. That's why we're sitting at 2-2 in the conference. That's the long and short of it. It's not because of the defense, certainly. We're averaging 32.2 points a game. We're 47 nationally with that. Opponents are averaging 19.3 points per game. So if that tells you anything, that tells you the defense is doing their job. Our defense is ranked 7th overall.
That points per game stat includes all the points that they've given up off of
all the points that the offense has given up.
Yeah.
So our defense is ranked 7th nationally. Our offense is ranked 37th nationally.
I think if you remove I had someone do the math for me earlier, but I don't remember. I believe if you remove the points off of turnovers that Clemson has given up, it's that number goes down to 13 points allowed per game.
I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does.
That's
I'm absolutely sure it does.
That's great. That speaks great about the defense, but it makes you
suspect about the offense.
That your offense is worth a whole touchdown worth of points per game for the other team. Like that's not good. That's bad.
No, that's not good at all. That is not good. But all right, let's shift gears to the other third of the game, special teams. And let's be honest, special teams is a problem for Clemson. Special teams is an absolute issue for the Clemson Tigers. I think you've talked about it on this channel. I've talked about it on this channel. I think people in the comment section have talked about it on this channel. We have to get a special teams coordinator in Clemson, South Carolina. There's far too much money in Clemson, South Carolina to not have a special teams coordinator designated to strictly the special team. This whole collaborative thing that Clemson does with the special teams is not working. We have one of the worst special teams in the entire country when it comes to college football. It's just unacceptable at this point. At what point do we need to look in the mirror and be like, look, we got to get somebody that strictly focuses on special teams? Is there no room on the Clemson staff for somebody to just focus on special teams? I don't want the defensive back coach focusing on special teams. I don't want the offensive line coach focusing on special teams. I don't want the linebackers coach focusing on special teams. I want a coach that specifically does special teams. That's all they do. I don't think it's too much to ask for the Clemson Tigers. This special teams team is absolutely horrible. They get an absolute F for me for the season. They're terrible. They're absolutely horrible. They have cost us multiple games this season with muff punts, with inadequate blocking, with
missed kicks.
Just, name it on special teams. Clemson's been bad at it this season. We literally do not have a punt return game at all. No. We barely have a field goal game. The only good thing that we have is Aiden Swanson, which I absolutely murdered last season.
Yeah.
And he's the only bright spot of the special teams. Like, what are we doing right now? And then maybe if you want to say Robert Gunn at kickoff, he kicks it into the end zone every time.
Yeah,
that's about the only two highlights of Clemson's kicking game is freaking Robert Gunn kicking it off into the end zone every time, and then Aiden Swanson being way more consistent this season than he was last season. So I got to give Aiden Swanson his love. He's done great this season. But outside of that and Robert Gunn kicking off, the special teams is absolutely horrible. What do you think, man?
I'm in lockstep with you. Yeah, it's got to be an. I could give it an F plus because of the two things you mentioned. I know F plus isn't a grade, but it's our show. I can make it up.
That's right. We can do what we want. Yeah, leave us alone.
I'll give him an F plus because Swanson has been he's been a capable college punter this year, which at times he wasn't last year, and Robert Gunn has not allowed much of a kick return. He's kicked it out at the back of the end zone every time, so that's great. But other than that, everything else not great. Punt coverage has not been great. The punt return game has not been great. We don't get much pressure against we don't block punts. And somehow we send more guys back. We don't send pressure, and yet the teams we play seem to create more opportunities to return on punts than we do. I don't know how that's possible.
Why does every punter that faces Clemson have their absolute best day of their career?
Yeah, I don't know either.
Why can we not return a punt? Like, what is the deal? Like, is Clemson incapable of returning a punt at this point? Because I'm literally convinced that we are. I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's a scheme issue. I don't claim to be a special teams coach or anyone that could figure it out. But you know what I do know? I do know bad when I see it. And Clemson's special teams is bad. It's
Yeah.
horrible.
It's not good. It's not good. It's been somehow it's worse than last year.
Which is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Because it was terrible last year.
Yeah.
So
outside of BT Potter, everything else was terrible.
Yeah, the only person on special teams that got any better this year is Aiden Swanson.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what we're doing. And look, I don't mean any disrespect to the new kicker. What is his name?
Jonathan Weiss.
Jonathan Weiss. I don't mean any disrespect to him. I think he's brought a level of consistency to the kicking game, or a level of confidence at least, although he misses on probably 50+% of his kicks. But at the end of the day,
consistency is a loose word here.
Yeah,
he's not thinking them. So
yeah, consistency as in he kicks it through the uprights maybe 50 or 40% of the time, whereas Gunn was kicking it 0% of the time before. So
it wasn't even close a lot of times.
It's not a big improvement. It's not good. And I don't mean any disrespect to Jonathan Weiss. I know he's kind of put his job on hold and blase. I'm so tired of the story. I don't care about it. I just want a good kicker for Clemson, and we can't trust our kicking game. And to me, if I'm being honest, Jordan, and I'm just going to be completely honest for about 5 seconds, if we don't figure this out in the bye week, which I don't think we do, I believe our kicking game cost us another game this season. Maybe more than one. Because crazy. I think that we are playing teams that are good enough that a game is eventually going to come down to a freaking kick. And we don't have a kicker that can make a kick at this point. I mean, he missed a 28, 29-yarder to beat Florida State. And I know he got called off of Wall Street or wherever he was, off the beaches of South Carolina and Charleston, prior to that kick. I don't care. We're going to cost ourselves another game if we cannot rely on our kicking game. We just are. I believe that. If we do not get more consistent at the kicking game, which I don't think we will, I think we're going to cost ourselves another game, and it's just unfortunate. We keep wasting these defenses that are capable of bailing us out of really crappy situations that we put them in. And for it to be as simple as a kicking game that can't get the job done is just crazy to me at a place like Clemson.
Yeah. You summed it up perfectly. Yeah, it would not surprise me if it cost Clemson another game. You can't rely on it. You're leaving points on the field, and the tougher part of your schedule is coming up. It's not great. And I really don't know what you do, because I know Dabo has mentioned that Robert Gunn has been hurt. He's had inflammation in his leg, so he's only really been kicking, on game days, which that's not great either, because now it's like, well, White's is not the most reliable guy, and we want Robert Gunn to eventually figure it out. But if he's not kicking and getting reps, he's not going to be a reliable guy this year. So, this is about as bad as it's been in a minute. I saw John Siri mentioned that BT Potter was pretty awful his first year. Yeah, but everything else was better. It was, and the thing with BT was it wasn't really the consistency definitely wasn't there. But you knew he had enough leg to.
It wasn't this bad.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Look, I know we point to BT Potter because he struggled out of the gate as a Clemson kicker. He wasn't this bad. I'm sorry. BT Potter was never replaced as a kicker. We never called somebody off the bench that used to play for Clemson once upon a time as a backup kicker that had never kicked a field goal in a game to replace him. So no, they're not the same. They are not created equally. Our kicking game is at an all-time low as Clemson. It just is. And if you say otherwise, you're just living in fairyland. I'm sorry. It's just we're not good as a kicking game. I'm not trying to disrespect any of the kickers on Clemson team. We're just not good right now. And I feel like if our offense is not able to really shift gears and put it together and figure this out, we could lose another game just because of our lack of ability to get 3 points when we need it. I mean, sometimes you just play a really good team and it comes down to a kick, and we don't have the ability to make that kick right now, and that's concerning. So, I mean, I don't know what else to say about it other than I don't expect it to get any better. So the offense and defense is just going to have to compensate for the kicking game and the special teams game. And I hope in the offseason
that's not a great proposition, especially with the offense being as terrible as they've been in the red zone.
Right.
So
Yeah. We don't get the job done in the red zone. We don't do particularly well on third down. We were only 40% in Wake Forest. We've been pretty bad on third down this season. So it's not a great proposition. But if they don't get it figured out in this bye week and the offense doesn't start thriving and the defense, continue to build on what they've done, we could absolutely drop another game. And frankly, we probably will because of the kicking game, because of our lack of special teams. And I hope this offseason that Dabo Swinney recognizes it and sees the need to hire a special teams coordinator because there's room on the staff. You just need to do it. This whole collaborative effort of having position coaches, kind of collaborate part-time on special teams is clearly not working. So it's got to change. Hopefully that changes this offseason. And if not, I don't think Clemson special teams will particularly get any better in the near future.
Nope. Yeah, it's going to be pretty. It's going to be a pretty rough ride. Just with where we're at. Hopefully, we can only hope. But yeah, that concludes. I believe that concludes our grades. Man, we got into the weeds. We're already 2 hours.
Yeah, we did, man. We did. I apologize to everybody in here. We're just a couple passionate Clemson fans, and it doesn't take much for me and Jordan to get into the weeds and get into our own little conversation over here. So, we're 2 hours in at this point. I say we turn it over to the comment section and then get out of here whenever they're done with us, Jordan.
Absolutely. And of course, if you haven't already, as it says on the ticker, please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't. We still got 27 people in here, so we greatly appreciate you guys, sticking with us this long. But we wanted to give you guys a bigger show. It's the bye week. I know that it's always tough, knowing that you're not playing. I know for some fans it's kind of a relief in a way because like, man, I don't have to watch it's not great that we went into the bye week on a poor performance, but at least it's like, well, I don't have to worry about whether this team plays well this week or not. I can just sit back and relax and watch the games and not be stressing about Clemson. So that, there's two sides to that for sure.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the side that I'm disappointed it's a bye week, but I understand the other side as well. We got 25 people in here right now. We only got 13 likes. Please go ahead if you're in here right now, hit that like button for us. I'm not trying to beg for likes or anything right now, but at the end of the day, it does help the channel. We do work really hard on what we do here, and we want to bring you guys the best content. The best way to grow our channel is to like the video and subscribe. So thank you guys all for showing up and showing out, and we'll turn it over to the comment section now. Go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah, Jonathan Benton, he gives his grades for the for Clemson as a whole. Defense B+, offense C-, special teams F. Yeah, that's right about in line.
That's on
with
par.
yeah.
That's on par with what we had.
Yeah. And that special teams great, man. Pretty brutal.
It's bad. It's true,
Tigers.
though. I mean, what else are you gonna say?
Yeah. He says someone needs to call into that Dabo call-in show and ask about getting a real special teams coach and see his response. I think we should task Becky from Gaffney. We need to see if she'll ask about it because she's the only one that seems to be able to get answers out of Dabo. Let's get Becky from Gaffney to ask him about it because he seems to give her the straight and narrow. When she remember when she calls in and and yells at him about the screens. I love that. I love Becky. K Klubnik enthusiast. He says love the long shows. Well, I appreciate. I'm glad that
Thank you, man.
That you like it because
we enjoy them too, man. Like me, look, me and Jordan could get on here and talk for 4 or 5 hours. To be completely honest,
but
if we didn't have to if we didn't have to eat or drink or had lives outside of this, we'd be more than happy to do it.
But we've always but let us know how you guys feel about the rest of you feel about the long shows because we like doing it, but we also are like, well, do people really want to sit and listen for that long? And so we appreciate that. Tiggs gets in. He says Clemson 0 bye week 56. I think our defense is a little bit better than that, so I think the bye week will only score about 10, but offense is probably going to struggle.
The bye week will score 13 at most.
Yeah.
But the offense may only score 6. Who knows? And 6, I mean, that's a miss extra point, not 2 field goals.
I hate bye weeks. Always have, always will.
Me too, man.
Yeah, I do not enjoy them.
It comes at a good time for Clemson because we got some injuries that need to get healed up. Nate Wiggins needs to get back. Antonio Williams needs to get back to this team. We got some key pieces that need to come back. So it comes at a good time.
My nerves need a week, not me. Said, I feel that. I understand that for sure.
I do understand that as well.
John Sarin gets in. He says, "What is the game you want to see this weekend?" Man, there's a lot. I think that Oregon-Washington game is going to be a barn burner. That's going to be a lot of fun. Michael Penix is just putting up historic numbers right now. He's cooking. Oregon's playing really good football. Their defense has taken a huge step forward. That's going to be a really fun matchup. Bo Nix is playing well. They have one of the best offensive lines in the country. It's going to be a good matchup. Washington's receivers are absolute dudes. I watch those receivers for Washington. I'm like, I remember when we used to have guys like that.
Yeah, once upon a time, back when we were wide receiver U. Yeah, I remember that too.
I think the who else is who am I thinking of? Notre Dame USC. That's going to be a really fun one. I mean, obviously we played Notre Dame late in the year, so I kind of want to see how they respond. They got pretty thoroughly dominated by Louisville, especially in that second half. So I'm interested to see how they respond against a USC team that, they have Caleb Williams, and he's obviously a superhuman, but the rest of that team, particularly the defense, is not very good. So maybe Sam Hartman in that group has a little bit more success.
South Carolina, Florida.
Yeah, South Carolina, Florida. I think that's an interesting one. Florida's played pretty poorly on the road this year. Under Billy Napier, I think they've only won one true road game under Billy Napier so far. So that's it's not very good.
Tennessee, Texas A&M. That's another good one.
That's going to be a good one. Miami and North Carolina. I really like the Miami North Carolina one. I want to see how they respond because both of those teams are on your schedule, and you play Miami next week. So that'll be interesting. Drake May is coming off his best game of the year. He threw 440 yards against Syracuse. Pretty pretty crazy. So yeah, that one's going to be fun too. But yeah, this is a pretty good weekend.
That's a good weekend. You think Louisville gets it done against Pittsburgh, or you think they have somewhat of a letdown game?
It's in the cards, no pun intended. I think it's in the cards, but Pitt is so bad, man.
They are bad. But I could, wouldn't it be the most ACC thing ever for Louisville to lose to Pitt?
Yeah,
after the massive win that they had, wouldn't it be, it would just be par for the course in the ACC.
It definitely would. Phil Jurkovec, they benched him. He's moving to tight end.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Phil Jurkovec at tight end?
Yep.
I can't see that.
I mean, it's I think this is his last year of this is basically his last shot. So, he's got to find a way to
he's just trying to fit into the NFL any way he can.
Yeah, get on the field and put on some because he's been a bad quarterback this year.
He was terrible.
He was bad last year. He really has not been good since 2020. So that's pretty unfortunate.
What do you think about Duke and North Carolina State?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I haven't heard.
I don't think they have Riley Leonard.
Yeah, I haven't heard much on his status. I don't think they're expecting him to play. That could be a game right there.
Yeah,
I think especially since NC State, their offense had a huge explosion. They benched Brennan Armstrong and Morris.
Yeah,
is the starting quarterback now, and they put up 48 on Marshall. I know Marshall's not amazing, but Marshall was I think undefeated or one-loss team. So that could be a spot for Duke where it's two really good defenses. I don't expect a shootout. But that could be NC State might be putting something together, and that'll be interesting because NC State is on your schedule as well. So a lot of interesting ACC implications this week, and a lot of interesting games for Clemson specifically because of who they play.
I mean, to be completely honest, as a Clemson fan, we need Duke to lose to North Carolina State.
We do.
We need
I think as much as I hate it, I think you have to root. I think I know the ACC championship odds are pretty stacked against us, right now. But if you still believe in that, then you got to root for Donut Dave. Unfortunately,
which I mean, there's a backdoor way for Clemson to back their way into the ACC championship game, and nothing pains me more than rooting for Donut Dave and the North Carolina State freaking doggies or Wolfpack or whatever the hell they are up there. But honestly, I need them to beat Duke. I'm not rooting for them, but I'm not rooting for them. Does that make sense?
I feel it. Is that fair? I will not cry myself to sleep if NC State loses this game. That's basically.
I won't necessarily care if they lose, and I won't necessarily be sad if they win.
Yeah,
if that makes sense to everybody, because I really do despise Dave Dorn and the North Carolina State Wolfpack. Yeah. I just can't stand their coach, and it's not even about North Carolina State. It's really just about their coach.
It's a little bit about North Carolina State for me because they're fans. I mean, you and I both have lived in North Carolina and been around.
Yeah. I'm super close to them, and it's quite irritating.
Yeah.
So I see what you grew up with and all that sort of. I'm just starting to be introduced to your stuff. But before, for me, it was just Dave Dorn. And now that I live in the state of North Carolina, it's like, oh, yeah, I don't like these people.
It's not. No, it's not great. No. Michael Forster gets in. He says, "I want to see the offense take more downfield shots, take the pressure off the offensive line." Yeah, I mean it. And the thing is the offensive line has given them time. I feel like Cade has been really conservative about how he's. With his reads, it seems like he's taking the check down way more often than not. taking the whatever his first read is, that's where he's going to throw to, but he seems hesitant to take shots downfield, especially when he's not getting the look he wants, and that's kind of where it is.
So I heard something this week about maybe Cade only getting one read. What do you think about that?
I mean,
I think it was something that I think it was something that Jason Priester said over on Clemson Sports Media, and something that he heard in Cade's interview this week that made him kind of think that he's getting one read. To me, that would be a travesty for this offense if they're getting Cade one read.
That'd be unfortunate.
Do you really not trust him enough past one read? Like I don't understand that at all. That would be crazy for me to believe. But again, what do you think about that?
Yeah, that would be disappointing, but it also wouldn't surprise me. You have a young quarterback; it's a new system, and he just he just hasn't shown the consistency, I guess. But that's all assuming if that's true, that he is only given one read and they don't want him to do anything else. But that's unfortunate because that handcuffs the offense significantly, and you're not going to hit explosive plays if you're taking the 5-yard, 5-10 yard route every single time, and
which I guess explains the third down play where Troy Stelato's wide open for a first down and he doesn't even look at him.
Yeah.
I just wonder how much validity there is to that. I don't know, but it would be, to me, if that is true, and I'm not saying it's true. It's just something that I heard from another person that talks Clemson football. So don't take this from me. I'm not saying I've seen it or I've heard it. It's just something that I've heard from someone else. If that's the case, to me, this offense will continue to struggle, and they will continue to be inconsistent if that's the case.
Yep, I tend to agree. So a few people in here said they love the long show, so that's good. Tiggs gets awesome. They need to be 3 hours. I don't think we can do 3 hours. We gotta wind down. But I appreciate that you guys are enjoying it. Michael, he says I could listen all day. Thank you, man.
Thank you, man.
Awesome.
Much appreciated, bro. We appreciate your guys' support and staying in here with us. I mean, we still got 25 people in here at 2 hours and 15 minutes in. So you guys are the real deal. You guys are the real fans. We wouldn't be able to do this without you guys. Mark Rogers has given us this platform to kind of do what we do and talk Clemson football because me and Jordan Bowman are really passionate about it, and we know Clemson football very well. But without you guys showing up in the chat section and watching, it would be pointless. So you guys are the true driving force behind this, and the reason that we keep getting opportunities on this channel. So thank you so much for showing up and commenting and supporting us.
Like Mike gets in, says, can never get enough Clemson football discussion. The longer, the better. Also, offense C-, defense A-, I think, and then special teams F-. Yeah. So it seems like
you gave him an arbitrary grade of A+. He went with the arbitrary grade of A-. I love it.
Well, F+ and F-. Yeah.
Yeah, F+ and F-. Yeah, my bad.
I wish it was an A. I would take a C for special teams right now.
Shit, I would take a.
Yeah, K Club. Yeah, they need to take downfield shots. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, the Garrett Riley offense has been predicated on being able to hit explosives. I mean, obviously running the ball first and foremost, but I think that it all builds on top of each other. You can't run the ball, so you can't build plays off of that. You can't hit explosives because teams don't have to respect you.
Right.
Don't have to respect your run game enough to dedicate bodies in the box. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and one problem feeds into the other, and vice versa. That's the frustrating cycle that this offense needs to get out of. Adam gets in. He says, "Let's hope they don't come back looking like they did last year after the bye week." Notre Dame, yeah, and that's kind of been a problem with this staff so far. It has been, really not just the bye week, but given time to prepare. I mean, obviously you mentioned the Notre Dame game was not good. You had 2 weeks to prepare for that. You had almost a month to prepare for the Orange Bowl. Came out flat. You had all that time to prepare for Duke. Came out flat. You had 2 freebies before you played Florida State, and you didn't play. I mean, you played your best game of the year, your most complete game of the year, but fell short anyway because this team is just not, situationally they're not good yet. So that's I hope this they break that trend, Adam. I totally agree. Tiggs with a bold prediction. He says Clemson defense getting 0 sacks this week, and Cade has 0 interceptions. So yeah, I that as crazy as that sounds, I tend to agree. I think the defense is going to struggle to get sacks in this one, but I think Cade won't turn the ball over. I think he'll have a better day. So that's good. Oh man. Like Mike gets in and says, also, who is y'all's midseason Heisman prediction so far? I think Michael Penix is not being talked about enough. I mean, I would disagree. I think Michael Penix, especially recently, I think he's been talked about plenty. I think he would be my front runner right now. I think Dylan Gabriel after beating Texas, I think he's right up there. Caleb Williams is still in there. He's playing really good football. Pretty much the only reason USC is undefeated right now. Those might be my top 3.
Yeah, I just don't want Caleb Williams to win it again. I don't know.
It could happen, but just with the way he's carrying that, because the defense is terrible. Good God.
Oh, welcome to a Lincoln Riley team.
Yeah.
Newsflash: they suck at defense.
It's horrendous.
When is Lincoln Riley going to learn that there's 2 sides to a football game? Like, honestly, he might be the most dynamic football offensive mind in the country. And he just refuses to get anybody credible on the defensive side of the ball. Could you imagine a just mediocre defensive coordinator with Lincoln Riley? Just mediocre. He doesn't I'm not talking like Brent Venables level or what he did at Clemson. I'm talking a mediocre defensive coordinator with Lincoln Riley. Do you realize what that team would do?
Yeah. A defense that could get stops half the time. That would be
great. In crucial moments, you just get a stop.
Yeah.
You don't got to be perfect. You don't got to be great. You don't have to be you could just be okay.
Yeah.
And just get stops in key moments. And you're going to win literally every game you play. Because that offense is going to put up, 30, 40, 50 points a game. It's insane. I don't understand how he doesn't get an adequate defensive coordinator. I just don't understand it. That'll never make sense to me.
Go Tigers mentions the 3 matchups to watch this week. Yeah, Miami UNC, big one. Miami falls apart against UNC this weekend. It wouldn't surprise me if Miami comes out playing with their hair on fire.
This is interesting. So I don't know if you listened to the ACC show with Pixie and Pete and Sea-Dog this past week. But what is up with the Miami fans and them telling me that the Miami players are lingering on this Georgia Tech loss? Is that true? Why are they not getting over this? It's one game. I realize it's probably not probably, it is a terrible loss. But at the end of the day, it's one loss. So I could certainly see, judging by what I was told on the ACC show by other fans, Miami laying an egg this week.
I mean, I'd like to hear, know where they're getting that, but it wouldn't surprise me because, just that's been a hallmark of Miami teams in the past. The moment they suffer a disappointing loss, like Miami teams of the past would shut down and kind of go through the motions, quit. Sometimes they would outright quit. Sometimes they would just kind of go through the motion. Guys would check out. I don't know if Mario has instilled a different. I mean, I think he's trying to instill a different mindset and culture there, but maybe they still have that in them. I don't know. But yeah, nothing would surprise me. As a betting man, I'm not touching that game. I really don't know how to feel, especially with the line being so short. I believe North Carolina is only 2.5 point favorite.
Yeah,
that's at home. That's That's interesting. And Vegas is begging me to do something that I'm
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do
it. Is Pitt still trying to find a quarterback? Well, no, they named their starter Michael. I cannot pronounce his last name. I'm not going to try, but it's a French type of last name.
Go look it up, everybody.
Yeah. The backup is playing. They know who they've named their starter. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if he's any good, if he's going to be any good, but
probably not.
They know who they're starting. Q's already responded horribly. Yeah, from the Clemson. Yeah, they were bad, and they were pretty much non-competitive from the jump. That was pretty disappointing. Michael gets in and says Louisville de facto ACC champs avoided playing all the best teams in the ACC. Yeah, I mean, this is something we knew at the start of the season that the Louisville, they got a really nice luck of the draw. But to be fair to them, they, but under the old division format, they had it pretty brutal because they had to play Clemson and Florida State every year.
Oh yeah.
They had some good teams that just, maybe if they were in the Coastal, they might have made the ACC championship. So
they would have made it every year with Lamar Jackson in the Coastal.
Oh yeah, totally.
However, they played in the Atlantic and they played Clemson and Florida State and other teams in the Atlantic, and they got beat.
Yep. And, they're just the Atlantic was just the tougher, stronger because that NC State had solid teams. Wake Forest was solid. BC was whatever, but they weren't a pushover. They were towards they're not there were worse teams than BC. In those years there were worse teams than BC as far as a bottom tier team in the comp.
Right. Division. It was kind of the equivalent of the Big Ten East and the Big Ten West. It's just. It wasn't a good situation for Louisville, although they had really elite teams because of the division of the ACC they played in. They just never had a chance, and it may have been different if they had been in the Coastal.
But they had some really good teams.
Yeah. But oh well. Sorry for your loss, Louisville.
Yeah, MJ Morris threw a crap ton of INTs in just one game. Yeah, I do think that I think they're okay with that because he at least provided the big plays and his running ability is a little bit different than Brendan Armstrong. Brendan Armstrong is more of a power runner, kind of like how we used DJ last year. Like that's kind of what he's maybe a little bit more mobile than that. But MJ Morris is he's a legit athlete. He can run. He's got good enough arm talent. I don't know. I think he offers a little bit more unpredictability in the offense, and his decision making, even with the 3 INTs, that's not really much worse than what Brendan Armstrong was doing because he was turning the ball over a ton too. A few more. We're getting ready to hit the 2.5 hour mark. We'll hit a few more. I see some score predictions. Let me try to get lowered. Tiggs gets in and says, Jordan Bowman for the Heisman. I wish.
Shout out to Jordan Bowman for the Heisman.
Kate Klubnik enthusiast with a great question. Since this is a good place to kind of lead us into next week. On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are y'all for the game versus Miami? Well, I almost don't want to answer that because I just, for now, I'm going to say I'm just going to go the easy way out and say a 5 because I do want to see how Miami plays against North Carolina. I want to see what that team, because if that team has, especially if they lose to North Carolina, if that team is checked out, if they look checked out, that could change my opinion. But I will say this: I think Clemson has a great shot of beating Miami next week.
Yeah,
despite what we saw on Saturday, I think they have a very good chance to beat Miami.
I may regret this, but I'll go a 7. I feel good about this. Although a lot of what I've said about this Clemson team, this episode of the All In Show, I do feel confident about us against Miami. I think this offense can figure some things out. I think we'll be much healthier heading into 2 weeks from now into the Miami game. I think we'll probably get a Nate Wiggins back. I think we'll probably get an Antonio Williams back. And banking on those 2 players coming back, I think we'll be much more of a formidable force heading into the Miami game. And for those reasons, with a renewed Tyler Brown and other guys on the offensive side of the ball, and a week to kind of self-scout and figure out your shortcomings, and maybe a week to solidify your offensive line, like me and Jordan talked about earlier in this episode. I think we can have a chance to kind of turn the season around and really drive forward for the second half of the season. So I'll go with a 7 on the Miami game. But again, if this offense continues to turn the ball over like we have the first 6 weeks of the season, all bets are off. All bets are off. We could lose 2, maybe 3 more games. And that's just being honest and frank about it. We got to clean up the turnovers. The turnovers are what's really killing this team. We can talk about the offense being inconsistent all that we want, but the turnovers are really what's putting this team at a disadvantage against the opponents. So if we can clean up the turnovers alone, I think we have a much better outlook for the next 6 games than we did the previous 6.
Yeah. Okay, I want to address this one because this one's interesting. Frank Craven gets in. He says, "Tiger Paw, does your family?" I don't know if he's trying to say originally come from Wyoming, I guess, and not North Carolina. I'm not sure what he's asking, but do you know of Frank Craven?
I don't know of Frank Craven. Okay. Shout out to Frank Craven for having the same last name as me. But no, I don't. Does my family origin come from Wyoming and not North Carolina? Not that I know of. My family, at least the family that I know from my family tree, comes from South Carolina. I was born and raised in Charleston, South Carolina. Joined the military, and then obviously lived all over the country and all over the world for a portion of my life until now that I'm medically retired out of the military. But no, I don't know anybody in Wyoming or anybody in the Midwest that holds the Craven name. But shout out to you, man. I'm glad that you have my same last name. I've never seen very many people in my life with my last name. As far as I know, it's not a very common last name. So shout out to you. Shout out to you. I hope you stick around. I hope you subscribe. I hope you like the video and continue to come hang out with us. So shout out to Frank Craven. It's good to have a fellow Craven in the live chat. So I don't know. I don't know where my family comes from. I have no clue.
What a great way to end. I'm gonna I'm gonna go post show and label it Tiger Paw Craven finds long lost relative just for some clickbait.
Yeah,
you won't believe his reaction. Yeah,
yeah.
Change,
Clip this.
do a crazy face for the thumbnail.
Yeah, for sure, for
That'll
sure.
rank in the views.
Absolutely, absolutely. That'll go over really well.
My dog just came in and said, "Please get out."
Yeah, he was like, "Oh my god, what are you doing? Like, I need to go outside. Why are you still talking into a screen? What are you doing?"
I think she has to. I think she does have to go out.
Probably.
All right. That's a great place to end it. Seriously, once again, thank you guys for tuning in. Still got 18 people in here. We went, it was a longer show, but we wanted to give you guys a lot of, kind of our thoughts on, where this program is heading into the bye week. What does this team need to get better? And, just spend some time answering your questions. So thank you guys for tuning in once again. It's hard to believe we've already played 6 games, only 6 left in the regular season. It's, this season always goes by so fast, but happy to be sharing it with all of you guys. So continue to come in, support, hit the like button, and we'll continue to bring the content for you guys. So with that being said, Craven, any last words?
Yeah, man. Thank you guys so much for showing up and showing out. You guys are fantastic as a comment section. I swear to God, you guys are amazing. You show up every single week for me and Jordan Bowman. We love to come on here and talk college football. It's one of our great passions, and you guys make it possible by showing up and showing Mark Rogers, the owner of this channel, that we deserve a slot on here. So thank you so much. We got 17 people in the live chat section right now. Please go ahead and hit that like. Please hit that subscribe button, and then check us out next week. We will be right back here on the Voice of College Football Clemson channel to break down the Miami game and chop it up with you guys about Clemson football once again. So thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it. And until then, I'm Tiger Paul Craven. He's Jordan Bowman. We'll see you next week, 7 p.m. Thursday. Go Tigers.
Later, y'all.